Education Day. We have Meg Loeks, one of our Sigma ambassadors and one of my favorite photographers. She documents her children in a very dreamlike way, and it really is a portrait artist or master. You're really in for a treat. She'll be talking about some of the prime lenses we have, and use Sigma code 25, Sigma 25 in the checkout. You will get an additional $25 off on top of already deals that we have. And from here, I'll hand it off to Meg.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am so honored and excited to be here. I am a children's portrait photographer, and what you're going to be seeing today, all of the images I'm going to be showing you are of my children. So they range from age 2 all the way to age 9. I have four kids, and I am, as Mike mentioned, a Sigma ambassador. I am a Pro Photo Legend of Light. And I am a Click and Moms mentor and instructor. I teach 2 online classes through Click PhotoSchool. One is Mastering Manual Exposure, which is a sort of, I would say, beginner course. But I do have intermediate, I would say even sometimes seasoned photographers take it. We experiment with things like shutter speed, the exposure triangle, custom white balance, all of that. And then I also teach this other course called Finding the Classic Beauty in Your Everyday. And I've been teaching that for about 3-4 years maybe. And that is more of a creative course for intermediate photographers and seasoned photographers. I am also a volunteer photographer for the Gold Hope Project, which is a organization, a nonprofit that gifts pediatric cancer families a free photo session. So it's a wonderful organization. And with that, I'm going to get started. I do want to mention I don't take client work. So I do get this question a lot about how I'm in business. And that's, for me, it's just purely teaching. So I'm teaching online courses. I was teaching in-person workshops as well. Obviously, that's postponed for now. But I do travel around teaching in-person workshops plus the online workshops and speaking at events and stuff. So that is a full-time business for me. And so I don't take on any client work and haven't for probably 3 years now. But I was, before I started teaching, I was taking on client work. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen with you all. Okay. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about holiday children's portraits. And again, as I mentioned, these are all of my children. And we live in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, very cold climate. We do get a lot of snow here. Winter is actually our longest season. It goes for about 7 months, starts usually beginning of October, and it can be pretty relentless. We hardly have a spring. So I've learned to really embrace this season, and I love the holidays, especially I think just having little children. And hopefully some of the things that I show you today inspires you either with your own family or of course client work as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and begin here. Okay, so gear. I do wanna talk about gear real quick. I do shoot with 2 camera bodies, Sony a7R4 and Canon 5D Mark IV. So I do have a mirrorless that I love to use as well as my Canon. I love my Canon specifically in low light situations. The color on my Canon camera is just absolutely beautiful. The reason I love my Sony is it's amazing with its focus and auto eye tracker. You can see here I've listed a bunch of lenses that I also use, all prime lenses, Sigma Art prime lenses that range from 24 to 135. I would say the lens that I use the most often between all of these would probably be, there's 2 of them, the Sigma Art 35. And I specifically use that lens the most indoors. And then the Sigma Art 105 1.4, I use that heavily outside. And actually this image here of my daughter and my husband, we're just walking back from our mailbox here. And I wasn't intending on getting this shot, and I just snapped it quick. I had my camera already in hand, and it ended up being one of my favorite shots. We were getting a lot of snow during this time. And it's just a really, really dreamy lens, a great portrait lens. So I love to use this lens when I can. The compression is amazing. The bulk is amazing on that. So usually the 35, the 105, I will say I also use the 85 pretty heavily too. I can use that lens sometimes inside too. And I feel like that 85 is just a great everyday lens. It's a safe telephoto lens to use. The 105, it doesn't always work for me because it is a pretty long lens. And it's also really heavy. So there are times where that lens isn't as practical for me as like the 85. And then I'm going to show you, I'm going to talk about lighting and all of that too here. I do use mostly natural light, but there are situations where I use created light, my photo gear. And especially in the winter because it's dark for a good portion of the day. We only get, I would say, about a good 5 hours of good sunlight. And it's still usually cloudy. So I use my photo lights pretty heavily, especially in the winter. And I definitely will mention if there's an image where I'm using them, you'll know. Okay. So onto lights, and all of these images are holiday inspired. So every single one that you see here is centered around basically from Thanksgiving to Christmas. And this was taken with the Sigma Art 35. And for me, utilizing light to guide the viewer through your frame is something that's really important, drawing attention to certain details to enhance your subject story. I love to use light in this way. And I'm going to show you some things that you can do in order to, draw attention to your subject and to certain details within your frame, just simply by modifying the light. This one here, again, was taken with my 35. And for me, it's a lot about waiting for the good light. As I mentioned, during the wintertime, that's mainly in the middle of the day for me when it's strongest. So I'm constantly studying the light in my home and around my home, paying attention, because obviously it changes from hour to hour and season to season. The light in this room of my house is different in the summer than it is in the winter. So it's constantly changing. I write down times when I notice that the light is pretty. Often I'm busy with 4 kids, and so I can't always shoot what I want to shoot. So I will write down in my phone or whatever I have near me. When I see pretty light, I write down the time and the location. And then I come back to it when I have the time. Now, again, it's important to mention that it's not, the lighting isn't constant, it changes. So weather is a factor, of course, but then if you wait too long, that light is going to change because of seasons and all of that. So if I notice pretty light, I try to get back to that location within a few days to hopefully explore that a little bit more, experiment with that light a little bit more. So I do write down times, and I center my conceptual ideas and shots around good light, good natural light. So again, I'm aiming for times where I know, if I want to shoot a specific room, for example, like this is my dining room, I know that right now, around noon, the light is best. It's coming in really nice and soft and strong at this time of day. In my daughter's room, the lighting is best typically around 2, 3 o'clock later in the day. She has windows that face south and she has windows that face west. So if it's a cloudy day, I know that I'm going to get some nice, soft, beautiful light on the west side of the house in her room. So I'm paying attention to all of those things. So what if I want to shoot and the light is poor? A couple of things that I do: unglue my feet and change perspectives. This is huge. It makes a really big difference. So if I notice as I'm photographing my subject, I don't like the way the shadows are falling, for example, on my daughter, I move around till I like what I see. Just simply shifting my perspective, my angle a little bit changes things greatly. So if I get a little bit closer to the window, for example, then the light is going to kind of fill a lot of the shadows on my daughter versus if I kind of pull further away from the window. I also manipulate the light a lot within my own home. So I'm manipulating the light with curtains. All of my windows have curtains on them, and sometimes I'll open them completely up and let a lot of light flood into the room if I need to, or sometimes I'm kind of closing them and kind of creating a pocket of light. So I'm constantly manipulating the light. Some of the rooms that I shoot in have more than one window, so I'm paying attention to that. Maybe I shut the curtains in one window, completely block out the light, but then allow, you know, lighting to flood in a different room or a different window. So on manipulating the light a little bit more, one thing that is really important to take note of before you start shooting is the environment important to your subject's story? Is the room important to your subject? If the room is important to your subject and the details within the room are important to your subject, you really want to consider allowing a lot of light to flood into that room and highlight a lot of those details, an environmental portrait. Now, maybe you're just trying to focus on your subject alone and not the details within the room. Maybe there's a lot of distractions within the room. Then creating more of like a pocket of light with curtains or some sort of modifier where you're really just highlighting the subject and trying to mask the rest of the details within the room is really important. So it's kind of making that decision before you start shooting. You know, is the room important or not? One of the things that I like to do too as well is place my subject close to the light source or the window. The closer you have your subject to the window or to the light source, the more dramatic the light fall off is going to be. So let's say you have a lot of distractions in the room and you want to hide a lot of things within the room that aren't important to your subject's story. Placing them close to the window and close to the light source, you're going to get a really dark background. You're going to have the light dramatically fall off. You're going to have strong shadows, strong highlights. So this is something I like to do often is place my children really close to the window here so that we have that dramatic light fall off. And then, as I mentioned earlier, creating directional light through use of curtains constantly and doing that as well. So you can see here in this shot of my children, this was shot from above, and they're really close to the window. You can see the curtains and all of that here in this shot. And I'm also working quite often in low light. A lot of the rooms within my home have just only one window. And so the windows also aren't very big. So I'm constantly placing my children close to the window, close to the light source as well, just because of the low light situation. Try to keep my ISO down. So on creative light, I had talked about how I do use creative light as well, especially right now in the winter. And this was taken, this is a conceptual idea. It's inspired actually by a Norman Rockwell painting. And I just recently took this and it was just for fun. And I had a lot of, it was really entertaining to do this with my husband. And I don't know, for me, it's a nice kind of break from photographing my children. I love to photograph my kids, but I also enjoy, you know, just doing these sort of conceptual ideas with my husband, especially because obviously he can take direction. With the toddlers, it's really hard, of course, to pose them. You have to get really creative. And so for me, this is a nice kind of like therapeutic break. But here I'm using the ProPhoto B10. And for this particular shot, I have a pullback. I'm going to show you. For this particular shot, I had the B10 on a light stand. Here we go. So this is a pullback. This isn't the pullback of the shot exactly, but it's basically the same setup. So I had my B10 on my Manfrotto light stand in this exact spot here with a ProPhoto umbrella, large deep white umbrella. So it's the large size. And what I did is I had my B10 on continuous light, and it was pointing into the umbrella, and that light was bouncing off the umbrella, which helps to kind of soften it and then reflect back on us. And so that's what, you know, created the light in that shot. And it's nice and soft. And I used my light because I just wasn't getting enough natural light to light us in that image. And he specifically was behind me. And so it was important for me to kind of more have like flat light in the situation. Normally I avoid flat light, but here, because there's more than one person in the frame, there's two of us. And like I said, he's directly behind me. The window is camera, left. I really wanted more flat light in this situation to kind of just highlight the both of us here. So for me, I'm using the created light just like I would natural light. I'm thinking of it the same way as I would natural light. I'm paying attention to the highlights. I'm paying attention to the shadows. Do I have catch lights in my subject's eyes? I'm looking for all those same things that I would with natural light as I do with created light. Mixed lighting. I do this often as well. So this is, I'm mixing natural light and I'm mixing created light. Camera left. This is my dining room. So the same image that I shot before this one, the same room. And so the window is camera left. It's a north facing window. So there's always nice soft light coming in from that north facing window. And you can see it's kind of highlighting them a little bit. And then I have my ProPhoto B10 behind this puppet show scene, creating this warm glow. And the one thing I love about my ProPhoto B10 is that it has a temperature slider on it, so I can warm up the light and create this really warm backlight here. I shot this with my 105, my Sigma Art 105. This is not typically a lens that I use often inside my home because my home is not very big. It's pretty small rooms, but I was able to back up enough to shoot this. I love using this lens though, as you can see, just because it's so dreamy. And I do feel like it really completed this image and making a really kind of dreamy, created atmosphere here. Ambient light. So sometimes I'm, using whatever light is available to me. And this is a shot that I get every single year of my children in front of the same store shop. And it's really kind of fun to see how the shop changes every single year, because every year it's different display. The lights are different. But one thing that I love about this shop is actually the lighting. I have a good appreciation for the lighting here. They have these like spotlights that are really, really bright. And so I'm able to keep my ISO down pretty low because of how strong the lighting is. So we go shopping usually, and then I get the shot at the very end of them looking into the toy store here. And so there's nice light falling on his face, as you can see. But again, I'm placing him really close to the storefront here so that I get those nice highlights on his face and I'm able to keep my ISO down. So how to keep children engaged in good lighting. I think this is extremely hard, especially for toddlers. And toddlers are my favorite age to actually photograph. I like the challenge, and I think you do have to often get creative with keeping them engaged. One of the things I like to do, just give my daughter something to look at, something to do. An activity is a great thing to keep them engaged in good lighting and keep them still. Center an activity around food, and this works for any age. So setting up something in good lighting at the table is great. Getting in the frame with them. I do this often with my children, especially my daughter. I think the younger they are, they're typically attached to your hip at a certain age when they're like really young, like my daughter here. She's with me all the time. So I'm constantly getting in the frame with her, which again helps to keep her engaged in good lighting. And then also pairing your subject up with another. So pairing my children up with their, my daughter with her siblings or pets is another example to keep them engaged in good lighting. This works really well. And this is an example that this is a shot I recently did where I just hung snowflakes. We always hang snowflakes in the winter from our ceiling. And I hung quite a bit this year and laid her underneath the snowflakes and shot through them. And so a little trick that I do here to keep her staying in this spot longer. First of all, she's looking at something. She's engaged and looking at these snowflakes, but I have my phone ready and I have a music video on my phone. And what I often do is if I see that she's starting to kind of move or get up and run, because I usually only have a couple minutes before she's just going, I'll have my phone ready and I'll start playing the music video and hold it right next to my camera lens and keep shooting. And that usually keeps her staying put longer just by playing that music video. So doing stuff like that, to having like snacks ready, I usually have snacks like M&Ms or marshmallows or something near me too as well, along with my music videos on my phone. So I have all these like tricks right next to me, so I'm prepared. When I'm photographing specifically my daughter, who's 2, attention span is super short, like a couple minutes and then she's gone. So that's why it's really important to have all of these things ready, to have the treats, to have the music video maybe near me. And then also my camera settings are all ready to go. I know exactly how I want to frame and compose my shot. All of those things are ready to go before I start shooting, because like I said, it has to be often pretty quick. Color and the power of color. It can do so many things, and you're going to see within all of my images, they're all in color. And it's not that I have anything against black and white. I just absolutely love color and the story that it can tell. One of the things that's beautiful about color is it can really help guide the viewer through your frame. It can create balance in your frame as well. It can isolate your subject and add symbolism and meaning. So this is our mailbox, and I intentionally had my husband put in a red mailbox for this shot when we built our home, because I knew every year that I would just want our kids to mail out their Santa letters, and I would want to get this shot. So I intentionally had him put in a red mailbox, but this was again taken with the 105. I'm getting heavy compression here in the background, separating, which is helping to separate my son and daughter from the background and helping to isolate them. But you can see the beautiful pops of color here, the reds, all of the warm tones. And I do manipulate this a little bit in post-processing within Lightroom and Photoshop as well. So I use both programs, and I will enhance the colors a little bit in those editing programs. So this is an example of a pop of color, and again, helping to isolate my daughter here. This was taken in our front yard, and you can see the repetition of reds as well. So I am paying attention to these sort of things before I start shooting, if possible. And I really think, like I said, it helps to isolate her, make her stand out, especially from the background. I mentioned balance, and here's an example of balance. There's some symmetry going on here, of course, but then there's also the repetition of reds within my frame. So I originally shot this, all 4 of my children, and I didn't have the snowflake lights on the right side of the frame originally, but I felt like my image was really heavy on the left and there wasn't enough of like something going on the right. So I added these lights on the right just to kind of balance it out a little bit more, so that it didn't feel heavy on one side or the other. So this really helped to add balance to my frame. So often what I do is I take a test shot before my children even get into the frame. And then I look, at the back of my camera, I look at my composition and I study my frame and, make changes if I need to and add things if I need to change up my composition before I bring my kids again into the frame. Another example of balance, and specifically color balance here. So you could see the pops of turquoise here in the left of the frame upper corner and then the right corner here. So this is helping to guide the viewer through my frame. It's adding balance. So these are all things I'm paying attention to. It's one of those things I think that's just super important, I think visually too. And it doesn't take a lot of effort, really. I take the practice shot, I look at my frame and I'm like, okay, I need to maybe add one more thing here. So I add it in and kind of create this little flat lay before, again, I bring my daughter into the scene. I wanted to talk about inspiration and where I get my inspiration from. And it's mainly conceptual ideas that I'm going to talk about here, traditions, nostalgia, and personal projects I'm going to highlight as well. So this is a new personal project that I started where I'm replicating old magazine covers and ads. And so I specifically started looking at like holiday, old magazine vintage covers and all of that I, might be able to recreate with my children. And I don't create exactly this. So you can see the original here is up in the upper right corner. And it's not exactly the same. There, a lot of the colors, of course, are the same, but obviously I don't have an all white background. But typically my work, I don't have a lot of white. I don't have a lot of bright. So I take the idea, but then I kind of stay true to my own style, my tones, all of that. So that is really important to me. I take what I like about something else, like this magazine cover. I really love the colors. I really love the idea of, wrapping, a gift with mother and daughter. So I took that idea and I ran with it with my daughter here. And this was taken again with 35. Most of my shots indoors are often taken with my Sigma Art 35. So another idea on conceptual ideas. So this was, and some of you might recognize, A Christmas Story, and it's one of my favorite Christmas movies. And so I also take a lot of my ideas for Christmas and holiday shots from Christmas movies. And so this is one of my favorites, and I've actually replicated this over the years. And this is a really fun way to watch my children grow. This was taken last year, so of my son, same spot. So you can really see how much he's grown just in 1 year. And I also took this shot of my daughter, but in a different spot this year on our stairway landing. But I love to kind of utilize films and favorite Christmas movies as a way for inspiration. So this is one of my favorite Christmas shots. And it was actually, the idea came from Scrooge. And in the movie, there's a part where the little boy is dressed up as a Christmas tree. And I love that idea. And again, I ran with it here with my daughter. This is a shot that I needed to do for a toy store. So it was a collaboration with a toy store. And they sent me Christmas ornaments. And they sent these to me in September. And so obviously we didn't have our Christmas tree up. So I was like, well, I've got to somehow, I'm not going to put up my Christmas tree in September, October. So I had to kind of get creative. And so I ended up having my daughter as a Christmas tree here. And again, as I said, I kind of got the idea from the movie Scrooge. And so I had my son kind of pretend to put ornaments on her. And as I'm photographing her, again, I'm doing that trick where I'm like holding the music video right near my lens on my phone. So I have that music video playing and I'm playing it for her so I could keep her still. And then I will kind of hide it and maybe ask her a question or make her laugh. And then if I see her start to kind of stir again, then I hold up the music video and she'll stay put again, stay still for a little bit. And I keep doing that. And so that works really well for me because it's helping to keep her still and keep her up on the stepping stool without getting down. And then I get a lot of expressions out of her between, asking her questions and then showing her the music video and then hiding the music video again and asking her more questions. So more on conceptual ideas. This is another Norman Rockwell inspiration. And I'm going to show you the original here. This is the original. And again, you can see that I changed up the colors a little bit. I mean, obviously I've got a darker background here. My son did a great job with the expression. I showed him what the painting looked like. And so we kind of looked at it and talked about it before I started shooting this. So it's not an exact replication, but it's close. The idea, I ran with the idea here. And we had a lot of fun doing this. Next one here, another Norman Rockwell shot. And this is the original. And called Santa's Surprise. Again, you can see I stayed true to my style, tones, all of that here. But the idea, I ran with the idea itself. And this one is another Norman Rockwell, and I just recently did this one, and this is really, I think, quite a bit different than the other ones. It's the similar idea, I guess, with the family looking outside the window, like we are here. But one of the things that I really wanted to add was my husband in this shot. This painting is called Dad's Home. but you don't see the dad in the original painting. And I really wanted to show part of my husband here. So I had him kind of waving. And so I added a little bit to this image and made it a little bit different and basically my own here. And this was taken, that shot was taken with the Sigma R85 on my Sony.
Hi, Meg. We got a question in the chat here from, one question from Chris Austria is, he also has a 5D and a A7R4, and he was wondering when you prefer to shoot with the 5D over the A7R4.
So I prefer to shoot with the Mark IV in low light situations. So indoors, I'm often shooting with my Canon. I do think it operates really well in low light. Also, I do really love the coloring on my Canon. The difference is that, so when I have to push up my ISO in the Canon and in the Sony, the difference between the two in noise is really minimal, though. I will say that, like, if I shoot with my Canon at 1600 ISO and then I shoot with my Sony at 1600 ISO, I might see a little bit of a difference in noise between the two. I might see a little bit more noise in my Sony, but I have to zoom way in to notice the difference.
Okay.
So Sony's great with like focusing and stuff, especially if my children are moving around a lot. I'm going to choose my Sony.
And two other questions. One was from David, how did you do the post process on the magazine cover? And from Ivan, did you specifically repaint the walls in your house for better backgrounds in your photographs?
So the paint question I'll answer first. We've always had the dark paint in all of our houses. So I would say, except for our first house, but it's just something that I think both my husband and I like. But I do also, I am paying attention to how it's going to look in photos too. So I prefer darker paint, especially cool tones, because I normally don't get as much color cast as I would with like a warmer paint. They tend to, of course, that dark paint tends to absorb the light. So I do pay attention to that as well. I would say out of all of like the paint colors that we have gray, blue, and green. Green, of course, gives me the most color casts. So sometimes I struggle in some of the rooms where I have a dark green paint. But like I said, it does help that it's darker. It's a darker color. If it was more of a lighter green, I would have a lot more color cast and all of that. So it's something that both my husband and I like, but at the same time, it's also something that I was paying attention to when we built our house. It was something that I was very intentional about with photos and stuff. So what was the other question?
I think it was, how did you do your post-production for that magazine cover image earlier?
So I did that just in Lightroom and Photoshop. Typically, when adding text, I would actually use Illustrator. But I didn't with that. I did the text in Photoshop. But all I did was just basic edits in Lightroom, and then I brought it into Photoshop and did more of my creative edits in Photoshop, added the text in Photoshop as well. But like I said, normally if I'm adding text, it's something I typically do in Illustrator. I just didn't for that image.
Right on. And I just two other questions. I'm not quite sure on these if they can you use a photo phone instead. And the other question was, do you give certificates after completion of full participation course? I'm not sure on both of those. But I don't want anyone in the chat to feel left out. I would say use your Sigma if you can over the photo phone, and the Samy, I don't think they give a certificate, but we do have a gift certificate at the end of this for $150. And I'll jump off this and let Meg continue. And we'll do more questions at the end.
Okay. So another idea or another way to find inspiration is traditions. Looking at traditions. This is something that is really important to me. And again, so this is a shot I showed earlier of my son. It's the same storefront, but I shot this with my daughter. And I think I have, yeah, I show all of the versions here. So this is this year, and this is last year. So you can already see like the size difference in my daughter. So again, I love to do these sort of things just to see how my children grow. I shot these both with the 105 again. And this by far is the best lens out of all my prime lenses for bokeh. So I like to use this lens, especially like in a city landscape, like this, like a city portrait, because I'm going to get these really beautiful like bokeh lights in the background. You can kind of see them here and here as well. So I'm often grabbing my 105 for that reason in these type of shots. But very classic, very traditional image. I like to shoot these vertically as well. Really just emphasize scale. And there's some nice vertical lines. And I think shooting this vertical really, emphasizes that. Traditions again, and this is another Norman Rockwell inspiration. And I really wanted to get this shot this year. It's taken during Thanksgiving. And it's not an easy shot to do because of how many people are in the frame. This is inspired by his Norman Rockwell's painting called Freedom from Want. And I also used a Profoto light here. I used I believe it was my Profoto A10 on a light stand with an umbrella and bounced the light off an umbrella. And my settings I've included here. You can see that my aperture is very narrow at f8. And that's really to widen my focal plane as wide as it possibly can go without, raising my ISO too high as well. My children in the foreground, my daughter and my youngest son, they're a little bit soft, and I'm okay with that, specifically because the two people that are the main focus are my husband and I here in the center of the frame. So I, of course, wanted us really, really sharp, but I was okay with having my two youngest that are closest to the camera in the foreground or closest to the foreground to be a little bit soft. More on traditions here. Again, this is something that we do every single year. Go to the Santa train. We're missing it this year for the first time in like 8 years, but this is a tradition and a shot that I love to get of my children. And here's another example. This is of my son. So same spot, just several years ago. Again, shot vertically, again, just to highlight the scale and all the wonderful vertical lines that are here. And this is another shot taken on the train. And this was taken with my Sigma 35. Again, shot vertical, again, just because of the wonderful vertical lines. And you can see he's really close to the window here, which is helping to really just light his face beautifully. And of course, I feel like this is a very traditional shot, and it's a great way to get all of my children in the frame with Santa Claus. So nostalgia is a really important part of my work. I feel like my work really centers around this. So a lot of the things that I enjoyed as a child, I love to see my children enjoy, and I love to capture those things. They have a lot of meaning to me. So things like this, every Christmas I used to string cranberry and popcorn on a string and then like make a garland. And my mom always had me do this and then hang it on the tree. And so this is something I love to do. And I kind of just created a flat lay out of it. And I do this every single year. And then had my daughter kind of in the shot here for this. And then I shot this with my Sigma Art 24. Almost all of my above shots like this are taken with my Sigma Art 24. And that's just because I'm able to include a lot of the environment within my frame with the 24. It's easy to use in tight spaces. And you can see I'm really intentional with the color balance here too. There's splashes of orange all over. There's splashes of red and green. So I'm kind of coordinating all of that for this flat lay. And one thing I wanted to quick mention about this too, as I mentioned earlier, I'm setting all of this up and then bringing my daughter into the scene. So I'm not trying to do this with her sitting right here because that would be extremely stressful. So I'm creating the entire flat lay first. I actually take a couple safe shots of the flat lay before I bring her into the scene. And then I bring her into the scene and I just kind of let her just go to town, play with whatever. And if I need to composite if I need to, take one of the first shots that I took, the safe shot before she was in the scene, and kind of composite that with a shot of her here, looking up, I can do that pretty easily. Especially if she's really destroyed the flat lay, which, she does. She's 2 years old. Again, nostalgia. All of my children in the frame here at the tree farm. So with nostalgia, it's a lot of, just more getting outside, simpler times, back to the basics sort of stuff. And so that's what you kind of see here. So the first snowfall is very, very magical. And it's something that I always get really excited to capture. And I try to capture in different ways. I love to get this shot, the shooting from the outside in. So getting outside and kind of shooting through our window. And this happened to be the first snowfall several years ago. And I had photographed my kids outside playing in the snow all day, but then I wanted to try to change things up and get something a little bit different. So I had my son kind of look out the window at me with the snowfall, and he kind of pressed his face up against the window pane, which made this shot for me. But you can see I've taken this shot over the years, and they're all a little bit different. So this one is similar, but a little bit different. This shot, I actually took crystal spray. You can get it like off Amazon. And I sprayed it on my window to kind of create this frost. Our windows don't actually do this. And so I sprayed this like crystal stuff on the window pane and then wiped it off right where I wanted my daughter to kind of look out the window. And then I had my husband, he was kind of on standby here inside the house. And I ran out, I'm on a step ladder with my camera to get this shot. I shot this again with my Sigma R85. I like to shoot these shots with my 85 just to kind of get a little bit of compression, specifically, behind my daughter and in the room. It also helps to make like the bokeh bigger. So I shot this with my 85, and as I mentioned, my husband's kind of behind her and just kind of standing near her so that he can help me get this shot and have her look out the window at me. One tip I have for these shots is to find a like tree line or something, or some sort of a dark background. It'll really help to make your subject pop if they're looking out the window. So right behind me is a tree line. There's lots of trees, and that helps to darken, what's behind me and darken her so you could see her pop. If there was just a wide open like sky, it would be really hard to see her. You'd have like the reflection of the sky and the windows, but having that dark background with the trees, it actually helps to really highlight her and make her pop. So I like to shoot from the outside in at windows where I have a dark background, where I have like a tree line or something of the sort. So that is my one tip and suggestion on a shot like this. And that's again why I'm using the 85, is it's making the reflection of the tree line behind me like really big bokeh, smooth bokeh to kind of make her pop even more. Again, more on nostalgia. Yes.
Sorry, just a couple of questions related to that last shot and this shot as well. Yeah. Why do you choose, or what are the differences between the 85 and the 105? And when you're using the 105, do you opt to hand hold it or use a tripod?
I hand hold the 105. And one of the reasons, it's the main reason, is because I'm working with really little kids. And so I don't want to have a tripod and set up a tripod very often. I try to have minimal gear. And so one of the things that I do is just always have my shutter speed fast with the 105. I rarely have it under 1/500. It's usually 1/500 or faster. So I'm careful with my shutter speed choice on that, and I hand hold it. With the 85, it's just a great everyday lens. It's easy to work with, even when I'm in spaces where it's a little bit tighter. It's obviously really light, especially my Sigma R85 that I have for my Sony. That's a really, really light lens, and small too. It's about the size of a 35, which is amazing.
Oh, sorry. And some of the shots where you're in the shots, what are you using to trigger those shots? Is it timer?
So if I'm in, yeah, yep, it's an interval timer. So I use an interval timer on my camera for all of those shots.
And are you using, do you use any specific filters on your lenses or specific lighting? I know you mentioned Pro Photo and natural light, but any filters?
No filters. Nope, none at all. So it's just simply, I'm either using natural light or, like I said, created light with my Pro Photo lights, but no filters on my lenses. No lens hoods or anything like that either.
And can you touch on the differences between live view and viewfinder in your process? Some people are asking about that one.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I do shoot in live view probably about 90 to 95% of the time. I love to shoot in live view. And one of the big reasons I love to shoot in live view is because I pull the camera away from my face to talk to my children. So that's really important to me, because I often find that if I have the camera in front of my face, I get this like deadpan stare, and they're just like, you know, and then they start to kind of look off and look away from the camera. And I want that direct gaze. I want them to stare right at me, and I want to get some really great expression. So what I do is I put my camera in live view, pull it down just a little bit, and talk to them. It's really rare that I'm looking through the viewfinder. The only time I'm looking through the viewfinder is when they're moving. So if they're like running around or something like that. Live view and shooting in live view can be a little bit slower. And so if they're moving around, I want to actually just shoot and look through the viewfinder. Also, I don't need to talk to them when they're running around and all of that. So that's when I'm looking through the viewfinder is when they're kind of moving and stuff like that. So hopefully that answers your question.
Perfect. I'll give you one last one, and then we'll do more at the end. On the tree shot with the one with only one light on it, and you had a very low ISO. How do you achieve that with low light and low ISO?
I'm trying to think of which one that is.
She mentioned is where the only light source is the tree. How do you manage to get such a clean shot?
That's a great question. So that, yeah, I know exactly what one that is. It is, I might have to go really far back for this, but it was, there it is. One of the tricks I like to do with this, put patio lights inside your tree. I load this baby up with so many lights. It's a pre-lit tree, so it already has lights in it. And then I put in more lights, just regular white string lights. And then I put in the large like patio lights. They're like, the bulb is like this big, all white in there. And it's like so bright that it's hard to look at, but it's really great to help light my children. I don't have the patio lights plugged in all the time. I just plug them in for when I'm trying to get a photo. And then I unplug them and just keep the regular Christmas lights, you know, on when I have my tree up. So that's my trick. Is the secret to a good tree shot is just loading up your tree with so many lights. So that's what I do here. I don't like the LED ones. I like the warm, regular lights. And so that's what I use here. So hopefully that helps and answers your question on that. I got to find my spot here. So I wanted to talk too about, you know, just changing perspectives. I like to try to get at least 2 to 3 shots out of a session. So again, this is centered around nostalgia for me, you know, getting outside, playing outside. But you can see just the differences. I'm shooting from the same sort of angle, but obviously here I'm in closer, I've stepped in closer, and then I've pulled back a little bit more here. And then you can also see, look at that bokeh. This is not the snowfall. The snowfall here is real. It wasn't something that I added. It wasn't an overlay. It was incredibly beautiful, but the 105 gives me the best bokeh. And so I'm often using this 105 specifically when I have like a snowfall, because I find that the bokeh is just the absolute best in situations like this. I mentioned also earlier, personal projects is a great way for inspiration. So setting personal projects for yourself. And I have a lot of these that I do, you know, getting all of my children in the frame once a month, creating these flat lays, and they change season to season. And you know, based off holidays and all of that. But I create these little flat lays, and then I kind of bring my daughter into the scene and let her just kind of have at it and have, you know, taste test all the cookies and see what I get. Again, this is shot with my 24, it's above shot. So I'm using my widest lens for a shot like this so I can capture a lot of the environment. Creativity. This is actually a multiple exposure. So it's a shot of my daughter sleeping in her crib. And then I did a separate shot of some Christmas lights. I did 2 separate shots. So it's a multiple exposure. It's not a double exposure because I've combined 3 images together here for this shot and layered them kind of around the crib. I don't know, for me, it's not an easy shot to do, but I really love to get this shot every year. And this was obviously in previous years. So it's nice with a Canon because with Canon, you can, when you're shooting in live view, you can actually see when you're doing a multiple exposure, you can see where the next image that you have is falling. So let's say I have this crib shot of my daughter on my camera, and then I'm photographing some lights for the light bokeh. I can actually see, if I have my camera in live view, I can see kind of where the lights are falling within my frame, which makes it really easy. Telephoto lenses, real quick. I love telephoto lenses simply because I kind of get pulled away from the scene a little bit and I'm able to just let my children do their own thing. And I guess that's kind of why I really am drawn to telephoto lenses, especially when I'm shooting outside, is I'm pulled back from the scene. I let them kind of do their own thing and kind of see what happens. I also, of course, love the compression that I get from telephoto lenses and the bokeh. This was taken with a 135. I don't use the 135 very often. I really love the 105 more. And I think it's just simply because of the lens length. Something about the 105 to me, it just is, I'm really drawn to. And I do think that the bokeh tends to be just a little bit better on the 105 versus the 135, but it's still really beautiful. And I love it for portraiture work, of course. You get this beautiful compression that's helping to isolate your subject and, you know, separate them from the background here. This was taken with a 135. And then wide angles, as I mentioned earlier, shooting from above, I'm always using my 24. These are great lenses for tight spaces. And it's something that I use both the 24 and the 35 quite heavily in all of my indoor shots, basically. And that's, again, just to capture a lot of the environment around my subject, around my children. So I do want to open this up for questions. I know we don't have a ton of time, but and I did answer some questions, of course, in the middle, but if you guys have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Some of these you've already answered. Someone asked if you use your Canon for the multiple exposures, which you do.
Yeah.
What type of videos work with the kids?
So yeah, it depends on the age. So with my daughter, she's a toddler. And so she's like into nursery rhymes and ABCs, Baby Shark. That's constantly playing. So we have, the only problem with Baby Shark is that she knows the moves to that song now. So if I play Baby Shark sometimes, so that she starts doing the moves and I'm like, oh no, she's not doing exactly what I wanted to do or pose for. So I have to be careful of that. But I have those kind of like music videos on my phone ready for her. With my other children, they're old enough that I don't need to do that. I usually just kind of talk to them, have a conversation with them when shooting in live view. But like with my daughter, I have to have some tricks and things like that, you know, next to me and be ready for.
So, well, we are gonna, I'll have Meg answer one more question here, and then we are going to do a little trivia question for the 150 gift certificate. The one question we're getting is, I'll do 2 here. First one is with how often do you calibrate a lens, or do you calibrate your monitor for print? Is one question I'll give you real quick.
I rarely calibrate my lenses. I think I've done it maybe once I don't have to do that hardly at all. I do calibrate my computer. Here, and let me get out of the screen share. With my computer, I use calibration. X-Rite is one of them that's great to use. And then Spider as well. Spider. So yeah, and I do that often. I would say I know some people say you need to do it like once a month. I do it maybe every couple of months, 2 to 3 months. I calibrate my computer, my monitor.
I don't know how short a time we are. There's no shortage of questions. You want to go to the gift certificate moment here, Rui? I know we have multiple classes today.
Yeah, let's get going on that, and then we can answer a few more questions.
Okay. So what we have here today, everyone, is a gift certificate for $150 at Samys on any Sigma product. And this will be judged by whoever answers in the chat first. So if you can get your hand on the chat, and we'll do it that way. So throughout this, name one of Meg's greatest inspirations.
Oh, we got a winner.
Oh, we just dropped it like speed typer over here. Well, that's great. Well, whoever that was, you are going to win a $150 gift certificate.
That was so fast.
And if you could direct chat Rui, she could keep your.
I think it's Keith Ayers.
Name and information.
Keith. You're welcome to unmute yourself and say hello. Congratulations. What's that?
He's
Thank you,
probably
guys.
screaming like Price is Right.
Thank you, Keith. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Congrats.
Keith, go ahead and direct chat me your contact info, please.
And Meg, there was a question, a good question here with all these lenses with shallow depth of field. What part of the body are you aiming at and trying to get the eyes in focus when you have these full body shots and people in different places up on the tree? Is there kind of a point you're aiming at?
Their face. So I'm shooting in live view, and I'm always aiming for their face. Sometimes I use, if I'm shooting with my Canon, sometimes I'll use my touch screen to focus and shoot. Sometimes I'm just using the shutter button, but it's usually always their face, and I'm often shooting wide open at 1.4 or 1.6, but you probably saw a lot of my images. I'm not often very close to my children. I'm pulled back pretty far, which helps to widen my focal plane. So it's easier for me to shoot wide open at like 1.4, 1.6 when I'm doing that.
I want to thank you. There is no shortage of people here saying thanks and how gorgeous your images are and how beautiful your kids are and sharing such personal work. It's just great to be aligned with you, and this was a really great class. So I want to say thank you to you, and I'll hand it over to Rui to wrap us up.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. You've got some amazingly gorgeous images, and this has just been so wonderful to watch and be a part of, and I want to thank everyone else for being here again. Please visit us at our stores. We are open in LA, Pasadena, Santa Ana, and for rentals up in San Francisco. Join us for our last class with Sigma today, the waterfall class, and always reach out. We can be found online. You can email me at edu@samys.com, and thanks again. Appreciate you all being here. Thanks, Meg. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Meg. Thank you, Sammy. Thank you,
Thank
Rui.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.